before the meeting, no planned fire. Hear the fire. There is fire. Churchyard. Council security. Public toilet. Reception area. There is a use by members. Finally, please switch off. This meeting is being live. If you address, please do not. Members of the public. Photograph. Take care not to disturb. If you filming them, please do not. Welcome to you, SY at Southwark and no longer. During the meeting, members of this not access the except as it relates. Send all emails, text messages. I would also mind speak their microphone as only the microphone and not to place their mobile to. I don't have any apology. I'm going to ask member of the public sitting. We could all introduce as a voting by so.
Thank you, Chair. My name.
Welcome.
Sam Foster, I'm a councillor in Faraday Ward.
I'm Councillor Adam Hood. I will be a voting member.
I am Councillor Sabina. Councillor Sabina Emmanuel.
Councillor Sam Dalton, voting member and a councillor in London. Councillor Richard Livingstone, Old.
And as notification of business, we've got an addendum report which has circulated and the members. You'd just like to repeat closure of.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll be. Item.
Additional. Thank you very much.
Yes, item 6 for Councillor. I have had meetings with council officers.
For those members who agree the minute as an accurate record of I'd like to just go through the structure of outline their recommendations and members then have an opportunity. Does any application response and in sectors, the applicant, anyone that lives councillor or councillor, they are present. Each present 3 minutes, and then each after each under those categories. Ask further ask questions. Then members of any additional then debate and vote. Item 6.2 on the and will so have agenda this evening 6.1 South Dock Marine Boat Street B7S pages 9 to 95. Beg your pardon. I'd like to
I'll just start by running through. This relates to update that was sent on the 1st of May by the Southern on behalf of the South Dock Marine representation boatyard business ban on sleep and the loss of officers have already I'll move slightly closer. But this addendum report just provides clarification on the relevant paragraph numbers of the committee report and some additional responses from the applicant on the concerns raised. So in italics is and the extract from the representation that we received, and it's confirmed in paragraph 7 that officers responded to concerns regarding affordability of the new workshop space. Paragraph 61 to 66 of the committee. An affordable workspace strategy will be secured in the Section 106 legal agreement. Officers have also responded to concerns regarding business relocation and the relocation. Paragraph 72 of the committee report. A business relocation strategy would be secured in the Section 106. The reuse of existing buildings and structures on the site has been addressed in paragraph 190 of the committee. And a copy of the health and safety report dated February 25 has been provided by the applicant after the new document will be consulted on. The second issue raised was in relation to ban on officers have raised this concern with the project. They have provided a response to this. In summary, the ban on berth holders sleeping on boats does not form part of this planning application and is a separate agreement between the council as the landowner and berth holders who use the boatyard. And then the final issue was regarding the loss of officers have responded to the concern in paragraphs 8 and 9 of the committee. A further query was also raised by Ward Council regarding the loss of storage space within the boatyards, which is currently used and rented out by residential berth holders. It's been confirmed by the applicant here that the same level of is currently provided and that there are discussions with berth holders about others. Others have recommended that the details regarding the provision of the storage are secured in the business strategy to ensure that the existing berth holders do rent that space during the refit. But we can come to the relocation strategy. So that kind of having considered this additional information, the recommendation still remains. So this, as highlighted by the chair, this application relates to the South Dock Marine Boatyard, and this application is being reported to the smaller applications committee. As the proposal is over 1,000 square metres, 5 objections have been received. The application site relates to the South Dock Marine area containing the crane for moving boats, which is to the west on Calypso Way and part of the Thames. The two plans here on the left-hand side shows the red line on a site location plan, and the right-hand side that overlaid onto an aerial image. A selection of photos have been provided just to show the members kind of what the appearance of the boatyard is, what it currently contains, a varying degree of structures, containers, and a vast area of hard standing that's used for parking and storage as well. So the existing boatyard comprises like a large area of hard standing that takes up the majority of the site. On the northern side are several temporary structures and the boat maintenance workshops. So that's on the left-hand side of this coloured plan. In the centre of the site is a WC shower welfare block, which is used by the residential berth holders and Greenland Dock. At the southern end is a car park, so moving towards the kind of middle to right-hand side of this drawing, and containers which provide at the moment around 1,400 square metres of workshop space, boatyard, small businesses. There's a group of mature trees within the centre of the site, mature trees around the eastern. And then there's a separate crane area immediately. The application site is subject to a number of designations. Key ones include the North Southwark and Roman Road Priority Area, Thames Policy Area, Air Quality Management Area, and Canada Water Area Action and Opportunity Area. The site also lies within flood. 2 rounds of consultation have been undertaken with local residents during the determination of this. First was in December 2023 when the application was received, and the second in February following information. In total, 133 letters of recommendation have been received, 6 in support of the development, 127 of objections. The bullet points on this slide summarise the concerns that have been these relate to the principle of development and why it's being progressed by the council. Concerns regarding the design, scale and massing of the new structures, and the concerns regarding the loss of landscape of trees, but also the landscape. There is currently a small community garden space adjacent to the welfare block in the centre of the site. As a result of the reorganisation and refurbishment of the site, this will. There are concerns regarding transport, highways and access. Concerns regarding the affordability of the new workspace, as it concerns have been highlighted regarding the lack of community engagement and coordination by the parks team. Concern that the Thames Path will be affected during construction. Concern regarding the facilities that will be available for residential berth holders during construction. Loss of storage facilities, the ban on sleeping on boats in the boatyard, works are being carried out. Legal issues have been highlighted with how the proposal has been developed and its concerns with planning policy, failure of the council to meet value duty and concerns regarding the public. In terms of the proposed development, I think that because there's a number of different uses being proposed on this, I've highlighted the areas of the site and we'll just talk through. So in light red is the main boatyard. The proposed development incorporates the reorganisation of the boat, provision of 2 workshops, new gantry and staircase for boat repairs, covered boat repair area, auxiliary facilities for the yard. Then in blue, so on the right-hand side, is a new area which is completely separate to the boatyard. It currently contains the containers and parking, and this area will be replaced with a new 2-storey workshop building, which will contain also a cafe, community space, publicly and some cycle park. The area highlighted in yellow is the new location for the welfare facility for berth holders. A new service area will be provided on the western part, shaded in purple, and a new crane is proposed in the area shaded orange, which will increase the capacity to lift boats up to 50 tons. This parking area is also proposed to be reconfigured to improve safety when and 2 disabled parking spaces provided on. It's proposed that 80% of the workspace, which will be created within the new workshops, will be charged at 30% discount rent, which exceeds the Southwark Plan Policy requirement. All existing businesses will qualify for discounted transition rent, and all existing priority to rent a new workshop space. During the determination of the application, there have been a few changes, including amendments to the actual specifications of the workshop space, an increase in the amount of greening on the roofs and walls of the new building, and updated technical and information regarding just running through the kind of the plans for the site. So this is just an kind of marked up version of the proposed ground floor. Then moving to first floor level, which is the area where the new workshop space on the right hand side will be provided. And the project team have designed this in consultation with existing businesses to ensure that the layout and size of the unit meet their needs. Then moving to roof level, where there'll be a mixture of green roofs and solar PV panels. And then to the elevations. So the top elevation shows the western elevation from Rope Street. So that's looking on the left-hand side at the boatyard and workshop areas. And then on the right-hand side, the new workshop storage space. And then the eastern elevation is showing the view along the Thames Path. And then moving to the top elevation, which is the north. Again, this is a view which you would see from the Thames. And then the bottom is the southern elevation of the site. The architect has provided a CGI view of how the new buildings and workshops will appear. This is looking kind of southwest towards. So a concern highlighted in consultation with local residents was in relation to the welfare for residential berth holders of South Dock and Dock. And this slide just provides a comparison between the existing and proposed provision. There is no policy requirement for a minimum quantum of facilities, but the Yacht Harbour Association does provide some minimum guidance. But overall, the proposal will provide an increased number of showers, disabled access facilities, and laundry as compared to the existing on-site provision. Another issue raised, as highlighted in the addendum, was the loss of the storage facilities. And as already explained, the intention is that further details will be secured to ensure that the provision is provided to meet the minimum requirements in the business relocation strategy. And also highlighted in the addendum is the concern regarding the ban on sleeping on boats while works are being carried out. As highlighted in the addendum, it doesn't form part of the agreement, and the council is landowner. The site lies within close proximity of priority habitats along the River Thames sink, and there are a number of mature trees within the site. The proposal does require the removal of 8 trees. A climbed tree bat survey has been undertaken, and there's no potential of bat roosting features, and the council's ecology has confirmed that they agree with these. The council's urban forester has raised no objection, therefore it is proposed that 33 new trees will be planted, 10 within the application site and 23 within the wider vicinity. And these will be secured through a financial contribution in the Section 106 legal. Overall, the development achieves a urban greening factor score of 0.311, which exceeds the London Plan target of 0.3. A concern has been raised by local residents regarding the loss of the community. As highlighted in the addendum, this is addressed in paragraphs 87 to 89 of the committee. And it's proposed that arrangements for a replacement community space, including that garden, can be secured as part of the community use management plan obligation in the Section 106 legal agreement. In terms of relationship with the nearby residential properties, the closest residential property is number 5 Windsock Close and 209 Plough Way. So Windsock Close is about 20 metres away and Plough Way about 35 metres away. So officers conclude that there would be no detrimental impact. No objection has been raised by our design and conservation officers regarding the proposal. They have commented that the proposals are considered to bring a more organised layout and appearance to the site, while still retaining its industrial character. The new buildings are considered to be of an improved quality, and scale would sit comfortably within the context of the site. On this slide just shows a palette of the proposed materials for the and officers have recommended a condition to allow these materials to be right at the appropriate stage. A concern raised by in local representations has been how this development will be phased, given that it is a working boatyard and used by a number of people for storage and their business, and just how this whole site will continue functioning during construction. A series of phasing layout plans have been provided by the applicant. The first, so this image just shows the existing red line, the existing site ultimately. Phase 1 is comprises the construction of the southern part of the site, so the right-hand side of this drawing. This area is where the current workshops and containers are located. It's proposed that these will be relocated to the north in the area highlighted in blue along the edge of the Thames Path, but it has been confirmed that access to the Thames Path will remain open during construction. The exact arrangement and location of the units will be secured as part of the CEMP, so Construction Environment Management Plan. The boatyard will remain in operation during the first phase of construction. Once the area to the right has been completed, the area to the left, the boatyard, that is where construction will begin. The area for the crane replacement will be undertaken as kind of a separate phase. This is just to show that even during construction, essential boatyard maintenance and facilities on site will be retained throughout. Planning obligations that will be secured in the legal agreement are as follows: an affordable workspace strategy, a business relocation strategy, community use management plan, a tree planting financial contribution of £50,820, highways and transport obligations, which include a delivery and service management plan, Section 278 highway works, and the removal parking permits for future businesses. An archaeological monitoring contribution will also be secured. So in conclusion, the principle of development accords with the aims of the Southwark Plan and London Plan, which seeks to increase provision of employment floor space within opportunity areas. The proposal does not increase the size of the boatyard, does not impact the Thames Path, which runs along the eastern and northern boundaries, and does not impact any access to the waterway. 80% of new workspace would be affordable, and existing businesses would be given first right of refusal. Improved welfare facilities will be provided for residential berth holders. There is no objection on design or heritage grounds. There is considered to be no adverse impact on the amenity of nearby residential property. Improved vehicular and pedestrian access will be provided within the site. 8 trees will need to be removed, but 33 new trees will be planted within the wider vicinity of the site. Improved greening and landscaping on the site to achieve a UGF, Urban Greening Factor score of 0.311. And following completion of surveys to the flood defence and river wall, the Environment Agency and lead local flood authority have confirmed that they have no objection to development. So the recommendation by officers is that planning permission is granted, subject to conditions and completion of the Section 106 legal agreement.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Do members have any followed by?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Zoe. I have 2 questions. The first is on the addendum, and it's really paragraph 13, which refers to the queries that have been raised around storage and what is going to be retained or reprovisioned, and states basically that, details to be agreed in the business relocation strategy. Could you advise me if berth holders have right of approval of that business relocation? So if the council were to propose something, that the berth holders get the right to approve.
I'm most probably going to ask Michael to comment, given that he was just about to speak.
The short answer would be no, not usually. For example, saying provision saying that there has to be a consultation. But the default would be no, but you are able to specify that there should be consultation.
And my second question is around the community garden that exists and paragraph 89 in the report, which basically, paraphrase my understanding of it, says it's too small council to consider it as a space. Could you advise me if that would still be the case if this development was taking place in a housing estate? In your view, that determination that community garden is too small, in case if this was a instead of a marina.
I think just to clarify first, it doesn't just relate to the size of that open space. I think in looking at kind of the concern that's been raised, officers have considered what is the current access arrangement to that open space. This is a boatyard site which has managed access, so it isn't publicly accessible as a park or maybe a community garden could be. We've also looked at how that space is used and discussed that with and asked the applicant to provide some clarification on that. And I think officers' understanding is that has evolved over time. It's an arrangement between the harbour master who runs the boatyard and residents of how that space is used. I think most probably they'd be the best person to answer questions on a day-to-day basis of how that community space is managed and what that arrangement is. But I think something that we do feel is that there is an opportunity to provide some form of garden or community space which could still be used by the residential berth holders. We don't feel that the community garden qualifies as other open space as suggested in the local representations as per policy, public plan policy P57. But we do think that there's an opportunity through the community use management plan for us to look at ways in which there could be a new space provided close to the new welfare facilities block and within some of the landscaping which extends around the edge of the site as well. So I think that's something that, again, we've recommended that's the details are secured as part of the community use management plan to see what can be provided and again that could be something which is undertaken in consultation with the residential berth holders at the appropriate time on that particular element of the use management.
If I could just clarify one last thing on what said then around the space not qualifying as other open space. Are you saying that it doesn't qualify in council's view as other open space, and that would be the case wherever it was based on the size and how?
We're looking at this as it's in the context of it being in the boatyard. So we've got to look at the site specific nature of where this other objectives are referring to as other open space. In our assessment in paragraph 89, we've said a security fence extends around the entire site. There are no public routes or access to the site, and the primary use of the site is a working boatyard, workshops and parking area. We haven't referred to the size of that open space within our assessment. We've looked at actually how it's used, how it's managed, and our conclusion is that we don't consider it to qualify as open space for the purposes of that policy, but we do recognise that there is a community garden there at the moment. And I think what we've recognised is that there is some further details that we can secure as part of that management plan to look at what is there at the moment and what can be provided in the future on the site to mitigate that loss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Zoe, for your presentation. Wanted to return to the issue of business relocation. To me, that feels a very sensitive issue, given most of the businesses, as I understand it, are birth holders in South Dock. So obviously this is something that feels very intrinsic to their whole way of life. They live and work in the same space. So I do think it's very important we consider this carefully. As I understand it from paragraph 2 in terms of business state relocation, if there are existing businesses that find that the new rent levels are too high for them, the offer from the council, the councillors, the offer from the applicant in terms of business relocation, either they'll pay to relocate the container, and if that doesn't work, they'll help them pay for the disposal of the container, and that's it. Because I know that in other cases where business relocations come up, there's something a bit more substantive in terms of other options available. Has that been discussed with the applicants about what other options might be available in terms of that business relocation? Other support there might be?
That is something which we have discussed with the applicant team, just to understand what that process is anyway of moving the containers, relocating them, or they don't want the containers anymore, disposing of them. We have been made aware that there's been a lot of discussions on kind of this more specific support, and our understanding is the applicant team have been providing that to the existing businesses. It's of note that in terms of the new rental levels that are being introduced, there is a transition period for those rental levels over a 3-year period, which I will defer to Mark Grant just to kind of expand on a little bit more as well. So in terms of straight away, it's not that the new rental levels will be introduced. There is that transition period, and also the option not to have to sign up to a long lease to kind of work on something which maybe could help support the existing businesses. I think we've also, as officers, again, been thinking about this business relocation strategy and the finer details which are to be worked through. And actually, is there some support that our local employment team can provide to the existing businesses as well? And I think that's something which we want to explore with the applicant through the more detailed drafting of the business relocation strategy, because we think that, again, is just some additional support, maybe making people aware of grant funding that might be available. So having those further details at that stage, we feel could be another way to explore support that could be provided if you're finding the new rental levels to be challenging or relocation to be challenging as well.
Do we know, and this might be a question for both the objectors and the applicant rather than you, so please tell me if you don't know the answer. Do we know, do all businesses own their containers? Some of them lease.
I think that's going to be a best question for the applicant team. I don't have the information
And just finally, just wanted to ask about the consultation process, because obviously there's been 13 events that have taken place in terms of consultation. Do we know, are those all post the submission of the application, or were some of those pre-application? Know that one, or again, is that something like?
So the application was received in December 2023, and some of the, as detailed in paragraph 22, consultation started in October 2022. So there have been a number of focus groups and presentations. I know that there has been a lot more engagement as well during the determination of the application, and I think just to note that there is a gap. You will notice in the dates from around when the application was submitted in December 2023 to November 2024, and during that time that was working through a number of kind of technical issues on the application as well. Obviously we had the statutory consultation of the application, but we were aware that there was a bit of a hiatus in terms of consultation events because of issues with the Environment Agency and working through some of the technical points on this application, hence why the consultation then restarted.
Thank you very much, very helpful, thank you.
Just before I introduce you, Dan, Mark, could you just, as an officer, introduce yourself? And is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Evening, my name's Mark Grant. I'm the Assistant Director of Property, effectively one description, the old-fashioned borough valuer. So I'm a chartered surveyor, looking after sort of all of the fees and professional advice on non-social rented homes. I think this is an incredibly good scheme in investing significant funds into a new facility that will actually produce a compliant, health and safety protected facility that will take us forward into the future. There have been a lot of changes, as we all know, in building regulations, in health and safety laws, in EPC requirements, and all of those kind of things. So it's essential that we invest in such a facility. Obviously, there are significant changes in rental levels that will need to be there, and obviously, as an organisation, we have to ensure that we get best consideration. Part of our financial rules that we have to do, but also we need to ensure that our investment actually also reflects the social value that we get out of things as well. So there is a balance to be had. So I think that the proposal actually recognises that balance, that we are investing significant public funds into this, but also are cognizant of the impact on our tenants, our partners in this facility. So I think that's quite considerable how we are looking at 80% affordable rather than the 10%, and graduating rents and trying to work with tenants to secure their future and the use of this important facility. I think that's.
Thank you. Councillor Dalton, followed by Foster.
Thank you. Firstly, just in a similar vein to the question earlier about the business relocation strategy, and could we introduce something to ensure that there is consultation with the berth holders on storage? Could the same principle apply, just to make sure what Livingston was trading around support and the actual business units and what extra support they could get if it's the grant funding? Make sure we put something in feasible around introduction of consultation at the very least around that. Secondly, just wanted to double check on the trees. I know there's more trees that will be planted, but 33 versus 8 that are there currently. Just to check the sort of the overall quality of those trees, but the type of trees is actually at least as good, or hopefully better than the 8 that are there.
I've made a note regarding the comment on the business relocation strategy, so thank you. And I think that's something that as officers we can work with the applicant to come up with details which do provide that support, and also speaking to our local employees. In relation to the replacement trees, yes, that is something which obviously is incredibly important to make sure that the quality of trees, but also kind of the future and the longevity of the trees as well. So the condition has a stipulation in it that if there is any kind of death of a tree within, I will just double check the conditions. So if a period within 5 years of the date of the planting of any tree, or any tree that is planted in replacement for it, is removed, uprooted, destroyed, or dies, or becomes of the opinion of the local planning authority seriously damaged or defective, another tree of the same species and size as that originally planted shall be planted in the same place in the first suitable planting season. That condition does just provide that reassurance to make sure that that the new trees that are being planted are maintained, but also it's there's a minimum stem girth requirement as well for those trees.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to ask about the health and safety aspect. You mentioned this, Mark, a bit in terms of the need to invest to improve the standards. In the objection that was made, that was responded to in the addendum report, it said that there is no health and safety need to remove the containers. So I wanted to know your comment on that. Is it something where, due to regulatory changes or other reasons, it's necessary for health and safety reasons to make these changes, or not?
I can't comment specifically on the containers themselves, but if you're doing new lettings now on commercial premises, you have to meet certain EPC requirements and workspace and so forth, and also the whole health and safety regimes around building repair and maintenance of buildings has changed significantly in October last year. So that actually makes some of the premises that we've got here, I suspect, a little more challenging to manage and occupy and look going forward.
Can I just clarify on that? Are you saying that were this not to go ahead, would there be an issue? Or are you saying that there would be changes that would need to be made as a part of the development that's being proposed?
So obviously what Mark's highlighted is one issue regarding the containers themselves, but there's actually a wider number of other health and safety issues that have been identified on the site, predominantly the current conflict between vehicles and pedestrians and the way that the boatyard is laid out. So yes, there is an issue with the actual container space itself and the lettable quality. Actually, from a planning and safety perspective as well, what's been highlighted in that health and safety report is you currently have a welfare facility block in the centre of the site, whereby pedestrians have to walk through a working boatyard to access the toilets and shower block and laundry facilities. And visiting that site, you do notice kind of that conflict. There has been some temporary fencing installed to direct pedestrians away from walking through the boatyard. But moving forward, that's not an arrangement which is something that we can support. Having kind of those conflicts, particularly also when the crane is in operation, you can also walk through that area. So yes, there's a standard for the new lettable space, but also actually the division of uses within the boatyard site. So having the welfare facilities accessed through a separate pedestrian access, having the workshops away from the working boatyard. There's some real benefits as well to address those health and safety concerns. And in relation to the use of the boatyard, obviously what's been highlighted is a ban on berth holders if they're having their boats repaired from sleeping on those boats whilst repairs are being undertaken. As I've highlighted, this is kind of a separate agreement between the council as operator of the boatyard and the residential berth holders who might bring their boat to have repairs undertaken. I think the harbour master most probably is the most relevant person to kind of provide a bit more in-depth knowledge and kind of reporting on what health and safety incidents are, but notably it is that the proposal was following the regime of other boatyards within London and the country in terms of stopping people from sleeping on their boats.
Just a quick follow-up on that last point. So the addendum report cites the project team as saying, or I think, hang on. No, the report itself says that it's not part of the planning application, but you still sort of make reference to it and respond to it and sort of response from the applicant. So what is the relationship between the ban on berth holders sleeping in boats and this application? Are you mentioning it just because it was objected to, or are you mentioning it in the context that it is contextual information relevant to a broader question of health and safety, or is it relevant to the development? Is this new ban something which relates or was caused by, or is something that is coincidentally happening at the same time as this application is going ahead?
I think it would be helpful to ask the applicant to make sure this is correct, but my understanding is that it's not a direct consequence of the planning application or the development. It's a change to the agreement that the berth association has with the berth holder in terms of the agreement they have with the berth holders as to whether they can still sleep on the boats while they're undergoing repairs. And so it was responded to because there was an objection raising it. And so it's useful to get that information from the applicant on the context. But as Zoe's explained, it's not directly part of the application.
Basically, it's a health and safety issue, but it's not part of this application. But I agree with Michael and so it was raised, and so we needed to understand whether it was material.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a follow-up, Zoe, based on Councillor Foster's question on the containers? And I just want to clarify something where there's a report that cites a number of health and safety issues that you've outlined, the parking area and the containers in their current state. Do they present a health and safety issue, or is the issue their location, not their standard at this point?
I'm commenting on this as a planning officer and not a health and safety kind of expert. I think the images which are included in the presentation show the varying degrees of quality of building currently within the boatyard. I think from our site visits, we've seen that there are some containers that are stacked on top of each other, have kind of maybe not in the best current state, and the access arrangements, kind of stairs and ladders. So I'm not here to comment on that because I'm not a specialist in health and safety, but I think what has been raised is that the proposal provides a very significant improvement to the workshop and storage facilities in a fully accessible 2-storey building, so that provides complete disabled access to all parts of the storage space, which is a vast improvement upon the kind of current arrangement of the containers and storage space in the boatyard.
I have to say, having visited on 2 occasions, it was pretty precarious in terms of health and safety. There were rope ladders going up and down one particular, and I certainly had a member of public perspective that doesn't have any particular knowledge around the working a working boatyard. It looked pretty hazardous. Anyway, that said, any further questions? Thank you, colleagues. Do we have any objectors that would like to come forward? If you'd like to introduce yourselves, sir, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Jed Holloway. I'm a planning solicitor from.
Pardon? My name is
Jed Holloway.
Yeah.
So I'm a planning solicitor at Southwark Law Centre. We give free legal advice and support to communities affected by planning decisions. We've got various members of the community here, both business owners, berth holders, a lot of them being both, here to give their experience in questioning. And if I could just add, we weren't made aware of the addendum, which I understand was only released this afternoon. I've already written my speech, naturally, it's only 3 minutes. I'd appreciate the opportunity to kind of further comment on those changes after the 3 minutes, if that's possible. Thank you. For 40 years, South Dock Marina has been home to a thriving community of boat dweller residents and independent craft businesses. However, rather than protecting and supporting this community, the proposed boatyard redevelopment threatens to tear it apart. Firstly, the proposals will result in businesses losing their containers, which all but one own outright, in replacement for units that they will only be able to rent. Fees will increase by 3 to 4 times, with additional charges in the thousands on top of that. It's completely inappropriate to set the rates for this remote and specialised space based on commercial rents across all of Southwark. Even for the businesses receiving the full 30% discount, fees will more than double, and other businesses will only receive a transitional discount for 2 short years, not 3. Business owners have made clear that they will not be able to afford this increase and they will be displaced. No relocation support is being offered, only the cost of relocating the container. There is also a complete lack of detail for the temporary relocation proposals. This constitutes multiple breaches of policies P31 and P33, and I encourage questioning on that point so I can elaborate further. This increase in fees will also result in increased costs for residents, risking a reluctance to pay for essential boat repairs or even pricing them out of the marina entirely. The alternative is simple. Keep the containers on site. it's crucial to note that the risk assessment documents do not identify any health and safety issues with the containers themselves, not a single one, only their location and access. The decision to remove them has in fact been driven by a so-called contractual difficulty, which is not clearly described, we think could be easily overcome. The Marina team has also admitted it has been driven by a cynical desire to maximise return on investment, and in the process has completely overlooked the severe socioeconomic, including which is a protected characteristic in Southwark, and equalities impacts. The Marina team has also overlooked the environmental impact. The removal of containers and construction of new units will have an enormous carbon footprint that is entirely avoidable. This is a breach of policy P70, be lean. The proposals also include a ban on sleeping on boats while kept in the yard for maintenance, despite this being common practice in other marinas. This will render residents homeless, potentially for months on end, with no offer of support or alternative accommodation. This is obviously unacceptable and constitutes a breach of their human rights, the equalities duty, and the statutory duty to help prevent homelessness. The concerns raised by the Marina team could easily be satisfied with safety measures and insurance, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to comment further. Finally, the loss of the community garden space is a breach of policy P57. Contrary to the officer's report, this qualifies as other open space since it is, quote, private open space, private, which is of benefit to the local community. That's the policy wording. Although small, the garden space is a social heart of this community. It's an essential amenity space for boat dwellers who have small living spaces and no gardens. It needs to be retained or replaced, and that must be formally secured and guaranteed. Our countless requests to fix these serious failings have been completely ignored. We ask the committee to reject this application to ensure that a new scheme can come forward that serves rather than destroys this community. Please take the opportunity to ask questions of the Boatyard community. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Wanted to offer you the opportunity to respond to the addendum report. Also, if you had anything else that you wanted to.
Yeah, thank you. So I tried to note them all down. I managed to read on my phone just then. So the reference to an affordable workspace strategy, is that what you mentioned at the start?
Sorry, could you refer to the paragraph that?
Oh,
We've got a copy which we can share.
That would be helpful. Yeah, so paragraph 6 references an affordable workspace strategy that would be secured in the section 106. My understanding of the policy is that should be submitted as part of the application, and as a part of a proper democratic scrutiny process, that should be before the committee and with a proper opportunity for the people affected to contribute to that process. So I think delaying it later is insufficient. These points have been raised over a year ago, originally with the development team, and months ago with the officers. I would say the same about a business relocation strategy. Just to say that will be secured in the section 106 without further right to comment, engage in that process is insufficient. Mr. Feeney referenced the ability to consult. We often see, an obligation, you must consult, but as you can imagine, it's hard to secure any substantive, content there. And what level of consultation will that actually result in anything of quality? They could just speak to them and ignore them. That would qualify as consultation. But I'm going to put it on record now that I would like for the business relocation strategy to go back to committee for approval, and that's a process that has happened before. The policy anticipates that being sent as part of the application documents, or at least before the committee. So I think it's too late, frankly. And again, we've raised these issues in reference to the policy about business relocation strategy over a year ago. So I have no faith, unless there is that proper democratic scrutiny process, that future strategy would secure what it needs to secure. I mean, they did submit a business relocation strategy. It's just
Chair, could I just rate?
Yes.
Just to a factual and clarification. Paragraph 60 of the committee report. An affordable workspace statement has been submitted by the applicant, and that was received before the reconsultation. So that was made public during the February 2025 reconsultation. And also a business relocation strategy document has also been provided. Again, that was before the reconsultation in February 2025, just to clarify that those two documents have been received. and consulted on as part of the reconsultation. But we do note that there is some further information, and these are evolving documents as well. Hence why the suggestion and recommendation by officers is that we have up-to-date affordable workspace strategy and business relocation strategy documents submitted at the prior to the commencement of any development on the site, to ensure that we have the up-to-date details to agree, and in consultation now with some of the local residents on those particular points as well.
So we've heard the officer response. Do you have any other comments?
Thank you. Yes.
So we're going to move on from business strategy and your comment. What other objections do you have, if any? I just start.
Okay. So I would repeat the statement that it might be an evolving document during the application process, but I think ultimately the final document should be before committee.
Okay, we've heard that.
Yeah, and I would, if I could just say, I was actually about to say, I was saying that I know that a business relocation strategy document has been submitted. It falls completely short of the policy requirements. I can expand on that. I would like the opportunity to expand on that. I can't remember the affordable workspace strategy, but I have read it, and if I haven't commented on it, it's because it's not got anything good in it. And if you are again relying on submitting one later, the same point applies.
Councillor Foster, do you have additional?
No, I think that was. I mean, it was essentially just to say that the to allow you to get to the opportunity. On that, it is important that we get matters of fact, about the strategy, the difference between a strategy, a document, an up-to-date strategy versus a draft, and so on is, perhaps too much in the weeds. But I thought it was a matter to be concluded before we.
And certainly towards the end of our debate application.
Thank you, Chair.
Followed by Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. So I get and understand the, unease with the amount of, uncertainties that are being left into other documents post this committee, and sympathetic to some kind of condition that brought back to the committee. Could you tell me, are there any other conditions that you want us to attach to this application that some of the
Yes, and I guess this allows me to sort of pick up the other points from the addendum as well at the same time. Regarding the ban on sleeping on the boats, I think asking whether or not it's formally the decision that has happened is formally part of the planning application is actually the wrong question. I think the question should be, given the human rights concerns, equalities concerns, breach of statutory duty, is it within the power of this planning application to prevent the ban? I think is the relevant question. Can we put a condition on this that stops that practice from happening? I think that's the relevant question. I think the answer is yes, we can. And I think the answer is yes, we must. So that would be one. Guarantee of garden reprovision. There's reference in the committee, in the original officer's report, and it's referred back to here, paragraphs 87 and 89. It's a sort of allusion to considering this in a future document. For similar reasons, I think that needs to be guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed that replacement space will be provided. I think that's everything off the top of my head in terms of condition. And if I can respond to the commentary about the containers themselves and the health and safety, the EPC regime, things like that, I don't think it's been clearly stated or explored how the containers could meet that standard. I think that needs to be considered. The original health and safety document, funnily enough, actually did anticipate a situation where the containers were retained on site. That was in the health and safety document that raised no issues. It actually was an original design concept where the containers were retained, did not flag any inherent issues. So we actually have that kind of hypothetical. Didn't identify any huge issues. I think there might have been some improvements to the containers required, albeit minor. I think they are the contractual difficulty that's referred to. I've spoken with the business owners a lot. I'm pretty sure they'd prefer to enter into a contract and comply with that process if it meant that they could keep their containers and stay on site. So I don't see that contractual difficulty as an actual hurdle in reality.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jed. I've got two separate areas I want to explore. So the first one is picking up on what you talked about previously, which is about your concerns about the relocation strategy. And you said you had outstanding concerns. Have you been fleshed over now? Useful if you could explain a little bit more about what your strategy is.
Sure. I've got policy P33 in front of me. So policy P33.1, where existing smaller independent businesses may be displaced, a business relocation strategy written in consultation with affected businesses must be provided. The business relocation strategy must set out viable relocation options. What has been written was not written in consultation and does not set out viable relocation options. So the fundamental point, first aspect of that policy has absolutely not been met. Subparagraph 2. Where existing businesses are accommodated in the new development, the strategy should, subparagraph 1, include specific business requirements, including servicing, fit out, and ownership or lease terms. That's not included. Subparagraph 2 must include temporary relocation arrangements. There is reference to temporary relocation, but a lot of the detail isn't there, and again, is trying to be deferred till later. You can imagine from the business's perspective, that's an unacceptable amount of uncertainty for their business planning, especially if they need to make a difficult decision as to whether to, stomach and try and make it work financially. They need some certainty before they face this situation. And then subparagraph 3, where existing businesses are proposed to be relocated, the strategy should sub 1, reasons why the businesses cannot be located on site. I would hope that reasons why they can't be relocated on site at a rent they can afford. 2, details of relocations options explored with individual businesses and the assistance and support that will be provided. Statements from the businesses are required to show evidence that relocation option is suitable for the viable continuation of the business. 3, identification of alternative premises in Southwark. Where no suitable premises exist, premises should be identified in adjacent boroughs. None of that is present. And if I can just add, the offer to move the containers will never allow for the viable relocation of the businesses. Those containers only work as a business unit because of the unique special circumstances of the boatyard. You can't just move a container and then carry on your business. The containers are actually part of what makes the boatyard special. And when they chose to buy these containers, it was either because they were already on site or with a view to bringing them on site, precisely to run their business from that space. So moving the containers comes nowhere near satisfying the concept of viable relocation options, as well as remembering that there's been no attempt to explore the detail of finding alternative places.
That's helpful, Jed. So I want to move on to my second question, which is, I've got a bit of extreme. Those I used to be a cabinet member with some responsibility at the time. I remember then there was some discussions by the holders of businesses here that they had their own proposals for developing yards to make it better. Are you aware, or perhaps if you're about how council's proposals here that we've got in front differ from the first holders?
I think that is probably a good opportunity to hand the questioning over to them, if I can, unless there are any other questions specifically for me. Obviously, we can come back to me as well.
Thanks, Chair. Just one more question I want to ask. You referenced another policy breach, 31, I believe. You wanted to give a bit more detail on that?
Thank you. Yeah, so policy P31, development must retain small and independent businesses. Where existing small and independent businesses are at a risk of displacement from a development, there should be full consideration of the feasibility of providing affordable and suitable space for existing occupiers in the completed development. Placement business space should be like for like in terms of floor space or bespoke to suit the requirements of the business. I appreciate some affordability has been considered, but I read that as, full consideration of the feasibility of providing space that is sufficiently affordable and suitable that they can actually stay, and also bespoke to suit the requirements of the business, I think would amount to a full consideration of the retention of the containers in this case.
Chair, just depends on you. So he has actual point back on whether you want that until the end.
No, I'll can I just invite Councillor Emmanuel? And then just having visited though, not all the businesses are related to the marine, related to the marina. So is my understanding. But anyway, some of them are completely unrelated. Arts, crafts, businesses, having visited the site. So just to sort of bear that in mind for those of you that.
Councillor Soames, may I respond to that point?
Yes, you may.
It's acknowledged that some of the businesses don't directly relate to the boatyard, and again, I think that's something that they can respond to themselves. But a lot of them live in the boats, and they see it. And when I visited, I see it as a somewhat of an ecosystem. It's self-sufficient, and it's quite a rare sense of community that they fostered there. Some of the businesses that they work with their hands, they make things usually maybe more in a creative context. They will often provide support and services to the businesses that are directly related to the boatyard. So although they're not directly serving it, they are indirectly serving it. So you'd be surprised at how many of the businesses that don't on the surface purport to be doing boatyard related work actually do in the end.
Yeah. You said before that you can be relocated elsewhere and areas. Have you yourself located anywhere that you would wish to go so that to make things, the transition much faster and better?
Again, I think that's a good question to ask the residents, but I don't think so. I think I'll let them speak. I'll let them speak. I don't want to get any facts wrong.
The only other thing that I'd like to comment on regarding the open space, I think that is something which has evolved over it. This is the impression I got when I visited. That is a space which has evolved. It wasn't a purpose-built open space. It's something which has evolved over time from that the developer that the residents themselves have developed. It is a boat yard, and they've sort of created an area that they've garden space. That I'd just like to make that point. I'm going to actually.
May I come back on that as well?
You may.
So I read the policy wording. That's the definition of other open space, and it includes, I'll quote it again, private open space, which is of benefit to the local community. So the fact it's covered by fences, I don't think is relevant. It's private space, but all of them can access it. They are the local community. It wasn't formally granted as a space. So in that sense, it has developed naturally. But we are talking over 20 years ago now, and there's people present who have been using it as that space for over 20 years. And that space itself, the garden space, is purely that. It is just a social space. So it is within a boatyard, but it isn't like it's a corner of a yard space where they sometimes have a cup of tea. It is only used as a community garden space. So it is its pure use in that sense. And I don't see anything in the policy wording that negates including this.
Chair, I think we said you were going to go to but perhaps just on the other open space, I think that the policy does say other open space does not include open spaces that are ancillary to and or within the curtilage of the building. as well. And so I think, as Zoe explained, the assessment that officers have reached is based on the location within the boatyard, how it's been used as part of the boatyard, as well as the access arrangements. So it's the kind of the holistic view overall is that it doesn't meet the requirements of the other open space.
And that's a sense you get when you visit. I'm going to invite Zoe to come back on.
I'll just be answering kind of just factual points just for the members to refer back to. It was raised that there was no consultation on the business relocation strategy. Paragraph 69 does confirm that there has been engagement with the existing businesses on business relocation. I'm just going to pull it up. It confirms that all businesses have been invited to attend engagement sessions to discuss the proposal, and also for the applicant team to share information regarding the new leases and also the relocation of and explaining how they can be relocating their containers if they wish to take up that offer. I think I also just wanted to clarify the point that was raised about the business relocation strategy and also the rental levels during that transition period. There's no reference to specific rental levels in the policy. That isn't something which is a requirement, but there is a requirement to provide information on leases, and that's been kind of provided at this stage in the business relocation strategy that has been reviewed by officers. And officers have also queried kind of how during the construction works, how will businesses be supported if they do take up the offer to remain at the boatyard and they do want to keep their container or their business operating from the boatyard. And officers' understanding is that all businesses who want to stay at the boatyard will be supported if they do wish to retain on the site. So that was just a clarification on just 3 points that were raised.
Okay, thank you. I'd like us to move on now. Thank you very much.
May I just make one quick comment on the policy analysis there, the first point? I promise it'll be very quick. It's not a point about was there any consultation. The wording is business relocation strategy must be written in consultation with. I read that as being a higher standard, that the document itself needs to be written in consultation. That didn't happen. I'd like the community to speak to their experience of consultation if possible, please.
I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you. We've heard from the officers, and we can explore and unpick that later on in the meeting. Thank you, sir.
Chair, sorry, there was a question I asked earlier which hasn't been answered yet, which was about the how these proposals differed from proposals that were made by birth holders.
That has a knowledge of that, who's been involved in. So how long ago was that, Richard? Are you?
Well, I think there's been a number of different versions of it. So I was aware of one when I was a cabinet member, but I think there were subsequent versions over the years. So it would have been prior, I think, probably to this process starting. So,
how many years?
But what is important, because the consultation response make it very clear that was raised by the they had put forward an alternative plan. So it is a consideration we consider, I think, before.
Thank you. If you could kindly introduce yourself.
My name's Adrian. My name's Adrian Priestman.
And what's your role?
I've lived on the marina for more than about 15 years.
Right, sir.
I have a very diminished business in the boatyard and have sought alternative employment elsewhere. I did one of the original boatyard proposals when Bruce Gloughlin was running a certain area of Southwark. And the proposal that was put forward that differs from the new proposal was about reorganizing the containers.
So essentially retaining them. So reorganize.
So the way the boatyard functions, it lends itself to creating certain spaces where boats can be worked on. The scheme is actually it's viewable on YouTube, and it was submitted to Southwark for planning, to Bruce Gloughlan, but it accommodated double stack containers and created spaces between them, covered with walkways and access, and was based around the improvement of water and power and the existing facilities.
And what happened to that?
What happened to that was it stopped the original proposal of turning the boatyard into housing. And then it fell fallow for a while, and then we were working on the basis of that same proposal with the previous harbour master who had similar views. And then there was a second proposal that was done along the same lines. And then I think most recently there's been a third proposal done by members of the community of Southwark.
Righto, but a variation of the theme that you've sort of outlined.
Yeah, I mean,
whereby the containers are retained, some sort of link between them is established, etc.
Yeah, maintaining the aesthetic, and the idea was that, I mean, based on Jed's point earlier, that people that have their businesses in containers and containers in the yard, they either bought them there or bought them in with the permission of Southwark. So at the time, so the idea was to keep the aesthetic and maintain the ethos and the working community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Right, just is it to do with that? Oh, right, okay. It's not a new question. It's to do with these containers.
Well, it's to do with it is to do with containers, but I think it would be good to have an opportunity to speak to the holders directly as well on some of these matters. I don't. It's up to you, Chair, of course, how we go, but I do think it would be quite valuable.
Right, okay, go ahead. I'm just like really conscious of time, and we're spending an awful lot of time, and we need to. But
sure.
Go.
So I wanted to ask, in terms of the consultation, there's been quite a lot of discussion around consultation around business relocation. So making reference to the Southwark policy on this, do you feel that in terms of the business relocation strategy that you were sort of invited to speak to or to attend sessions on, that this was written in consultation with you? Was the business relocation strategy written in consultation with you? And do you believe that you have had viable relocation options set out?
The answer is absolutely not on both those questions. And I would like to comment that on every single occasion that we've attempted to engage with the engagement process, if you like, most of our comments and knowledge and requests have been ignored. There is not a relocation offer of any description. The only offer has been for businesses to have their containers moved out of the yard. That is the only thing that's been offered. And just going back to the question slightly kind of previously in terms of the proposals that have been put forward repeatedly, we've had previously really good support. We've had comments from Kieran Williams, we've had comments from a number of different officers in support of the proposals that we've put together very comprehensively, that set out a whole range of really innovative, cost-saving, ecologically sound arguments for retaining containers, for innovating and creating a marine centre of excellence, which puts the needs of the community that rely on this service at the centre of the design. And we've previously had commitments from Southwark to a co-design process. None of those commitments have been honoured And that's one of the reasons that you've received over 120 objections that are very articulate, very clear, and set out exactly what the problems are. We really, really welcome the investment of improvement, and we really, really welcome the opportunity to create a marine centre of excellence which puts our community's needs absolutely forefront and at the middle of this. These design proposals do not do that. They actually actively exclude us from the yard, and they prevent our businesses from existing, let alone growing, for the future needs of our community.
Thanks. I wanted to ask a question about, which also pertains to the ownership. As we heard that most of the containers are owned, but it will proposal new decision owned. So it would be good to have your thoughts on that model, basically, and on the question of affordability. Do you see? We heard from Jed before that the result of the proposals on affordability to effectively drive out large amounts of the businesses there. So it'd be good to hear from you on that, whether a doubling or tripling of events, even if staggered over 3 years, is sustainable for your businesses. And I was wondering, could you talk as well, since we've
Sure. Yes, my name is Charlie Murphy. You may have noticed some of my objections in previous planning applications. So I've lived at South Dock Marina for over 12 years, and I've been very involved in trying to support our community through these really challenging impacts on our way of life and our ability to live safely and grow into the future. In terms of the question about affordability, it's absolutely impossible for, I would say, 99% of the existing businesses to be able to stomach that kind of rise in fees. There's many additional fees that aren't currently kind of fully annotated, but for myself, I run a kind of creative business, but I also support my community and do a lot of social enterprise work. The rise for me, I don't get a discount, so I definitely can't afford to stay. Many of the businesses that are here tonight who will be happy to answer questions also cannot afford any of the fee rises that are being proposed. On top of those fee rises, there are one-off fees for issuing licenses. There's also lots of undisclosed additional fees and business rates being proposed. So there are examples of people that maybe have 2 shipping containers at the moment to operate their business. They will not be able to have anything like the same size, and the rates that they're looking at are at least 4-fold in terms of the increase, which is totally unsustainable or unachievable for many people.
Okay, I think we now really do. Thank you very much. Yes. 5 minutes. Could I, I'd like to resume the meeting. Can I invite the applicant to board, please? And if you'd like to introduce yourself, state your role, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes to present. Get a 30-second. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Phil Cotman, Harbour Master at South Dock Marina.
And I am Maria Westerstall, project architect at Cotterland Vermeulen Architecture.
So quickly,
Sorry,
Maria.
Maria Westerstall. It's a lot of mouthfuls. Westerstall at Cotterland Vermeulen Architecture.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. When you're ready, Mr.
The Council supports the continuity of a revitalised boatyard at South Dock Marina, has approved a significant capital investment of over £8 million so that it can be fit for purpose, and a centre of excellence for future maritime businesses and local boat dwellers. This investment is at a scale which responds to stakeholder consultation to ensure that all current business occupiers can have a purpose-built workshop which are safe and modern and of a size to be affordable for small businesses. There has been significant consultation over many years to carefully develop the current plans, which have been amended over that time to ensure that the marina's community needs are met. This required further capital investment being awarded to the scheme. Additionally, a new crane and enlarged boat repair area will ensure that maritime businesses be well equipped to maintain and expand their future operations. Over time, businesses and berth holders have established a strong sense of community. Council recognises this, and as a result, future boatyard will include the provision of a new cafe, dedicated event space, and a green space to enable more open days and celebrations. Despite there being some opposition to the proposal, it is supported by a variety of berth holders, boatyard businesses, and local residents who appreciate the benefits which will come from a modernised boatyard.
I will just speak a little bit to the division of the site, which is integral to the proposal between the boatyard and the shared area that, of the berth holders and workshops. So the boatyard, a lot has been said already, with the larger, much expanded hard standing that can take the much larger boats that will come in and be served by the crane, supported by large sheds and surfacing and drainage to the site. On the right-hand side of that slide is the shared area, which is the new workshop and berth holder facility block, which is shared between the two user groups, organised around a new yard, which acts as a kind of internal street between the riverfront, which has a new entrance, and Calypso Way, which also has a new entrance. So that would be a kind of new social focus also for these two communities, which overlap. Workshops are provided in a range of sizes. We've consulted to make some of them smaller and some of them larger. Some of them are heated, some are unheated, some are for heavy duty work, others are for lighter duty. All of this will be delivered with modular construction, a permanent building, which is very flexible, both at design stage and also for future remodeling to reflect the changing nature of the need to adapt. The event space is upstairs and has its own. The workshops have their own welfare and toilet facilities that are separate from the berth holder facilities. And then in the cafe landscape is an area we look forward to developing in more detail, where there is opportunity to develop planting schemes, and there is covered outdoor seating, a cafe, visitor toilet, and cycle parking. So that describes the scheme.
That's it. Your time's up. It's actually gone over.
Oh,
But,
sorry. I was waiting for you to stop me.
I'd like to invite Councillor Hurd, followed by.
Thank you, Chair. I've got three questions. The first is on the addendum that we received today and the objection we received regarding the rent and references to workspace strategy, I wanted to invite you to respond on the comments raised about the rent and request for a provision of a certain discount for birth holders. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Workshops in
The workshops currently are on a different basis to the planned new workshops. Currently, workshop areas are containers owned by the business owner, and they pay ground rent for their container in the boatyard. Moving forward, if this application is successful, the workshops will be modular light industrial units supplied by the council for businesses to occupy. They will have services in them to ensure that they are compliant with the council, to ensure that health and safety governance is met. The transition rents on the first year will be very similar to the same cost as a rental space for a container. And with the 30% discount at the full price, they will be approximately 2.5 times cost, the same amount of space. We've listened to a number of business owners, various different consultations. Some of the units are larger due to the requirements of their businesses. Other units have been made smaller to help those which required smaller space to reduce the cost for their rental.
Okay, I want to come back to something we were discussing earlier with the officer around the existing containers. And could you, when we were discussing it earlier, there was some debate about their removal, that was under health and safety grounds or something else. Could you comment as to why they're being moved and not incorporated into the...
So the reason that the current containers are not included in the scheme, we did look at including them. Most of them have been modified in a number of ways. So restacking them would prove difficult with the different openings and doorways which have been over their lifespan. Also, to make them compliant for building control, we would need to carry out a number of different processes to them. We also looked at whether we replace them with containers as an alternative to trying to restack the current ones.
So would it be fair to say it was a viable, feasible option to reuse containers? However, that would present additional challenges with regards to making them comply with current standards. That would be impossible to do.
It would be difficult to make them comply with existing building control requirements. It would also give us an issue with ownership of containers. If we restack them, if somebody then wished to leave, that would also be an issue.
The final question for me on the existing small community garden space existing there. What was there a reason for not including a similar space in?
There is a similar space in the new design near the cafe. The current community garden is in the middle of the boatyard. Not an ideal position for it, with boats and being moved around in there. Be clear, the community garden is actually the two middle pictures on the top row on the display. Whilst I understand it is a very popular item with the birth holders and they wish to retain it, we very much hope that the new green space that we are planning to put in the cafe area will meet their expectations better.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Very much, and thank you for your presentation to us. That was helpful. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, one I think following on from Councillor Hood's about the overall principle, and I think in particular the affordability. So I've heard from some of the businesses there, they felt that the majority, I think that the figure quoted to us as 99%. I don't know how accurate that is, but certainly it seemed very clear that a significant majority of the businesses they felt would not be able to afford the new rents at the level suggested. So just to hear your views on that, and also within that, if you could talk about, I mean, the 3 years staging feels quite tight for businesses. Whether that is something there's any.
Following the engagement we've had, we believe that the percentage is not 99%. It's much lower than that. In fact, I have some businesses which actually want, existing businesses which actually want more space than they currently have. Regarding the transition, we think it's a fair transition, but I guess there could be some flexibility in that.
That's helpful. I don't want to hold you to a percentage, but we've got somewhere between 99% and 0 there, where you're saying the figure falls. So I'm not going to ask you for a precise percentage, but are we saying that we think a majority of businesses would be able to afford? Yeah, given as we've heard from the Southwark Law Centre earlier, that there's this very much this sense that this is part of an ecosystem, businesses and the burst together. It's part of that community, that makeup. So to understand that a little bit better. I'm not going to hold you to a percentage, but
okay, we have 23 businesses currently in the boatyard, and I would expect somewhere around 7 will find it difficult.
That's helpful. A final question. I've got 2 questions. So you talked about in terms of if they need to be relocated, that you would be helping with the removal or the costs related to containers. Would that be also true of businesses that are staying? There'd be help and support for those businesses staying about removing the containers from the site?
We hope all 23 businesses wish to remain, because we certainly would like them to remain. The help which we are proposing is to help them move containers off site, because in the new scheme there are no big containers retained. We have a temporary relocation within the surrounding area of the boatyard for businesses which are staying. That will still mean that for some of them they will have to move into temporary accommodation while the works are carried out, and that will require their containers to go. So whether it is beginning of the relocation or the end, by the end all containers will have to have left, and the offer to all container owners is we will pay for relocation to anywhere UK mainland for themselves, or if they choose to sell them, we will deliver them to the new owner.
Okay, so that's the case whether they remain or.
That's true.
Thank you. And final question I had. So you've heard from the Southwark Law Centre again about their concerns about consultation and quite what the business relocation strategy looked like, and they suggested that might be a matter that came back to a future committee for us to consider once this got a few further process for us to approve specifically at committee. And that is something that we have done previously on, well, one application I know of, which was Borough Triangle. Now, obviously, this is a different application, and in that case, we have the applicant approval for that to happen as a way forward. But really, just to get your thoughts on that, whether that be something that would be happy for us to consider as a way forward.
A difficulty with a relocation strategy is through our engagement, it has not been clear out of the 23 businesses how many wish to stay or which would they consider to move on. Without that, it's quite difficult for us to actually have a final strategy because we don't know how many we are trying to accommodate either staying or leaving. We could have we're happy to agree to coming back to a further meeting regarding the strategy. I think the difficulty with that is you talk about consultation. Whilst we're keen to have a consultation, we would be concerned that we could end up in a position where the consultation goes round in circles continuously. It's taken us 3 years to get to this stage today.
No, that's helpful. I mean, and I understand your concerns about that. Clearly, any strategy is a condition that has to be agreed before the final version of this application is granted. It's got to come back in some form to the council anyway. It's just whether it comes to committee or whether it's agreed, delegated authority by officers. So the process is kind of there already. And to me, there's one or two concerns. And to me, the particular concern seems to be about that sort of those businesses that might have to relocate. You're talking about help with relocating their container, but not much else beyond that. And to me, that feels as if that might be something that affects the viability of those businesses. And I'd like to see something further on that. Now, clearly, if you have a process and a consultation on that, you may well still get either a lack of engagement, or you may get responses back which say no, we still don't like it, and that would obviously at that point be something for us as a committee to consider if that did come back. But it doesn't strike me as it ought to be. It might delay things by a couple of weeks or so, but we're able to deal with these things fairly quickly as Borough Triangle shown. So if that was something, that wouldn't be a deal breaker for you.
Weeks rather than months.
Can you clarify, does that include a decision on the development, or is that a separate decision on the relocation?
Just on the relocation strategy, as I said, I think there needs, to me, it feels like there needs to be a bit more work done on that relocation strategy, and so therefore I'd like to come back to committee for us to see that. And I accept, by the very nature of these things, it may not be that you can get 100% agreement on all of these things from everybody involved, but it does strike me that some further movement could happen. So therefore, it'd be useful to come back to this committee so we can see that movement.
The answer to that is yes, on the relocation strategy.
Thank you. Can I just ask, in your hand, anyone, and Sabina, and so Sabina, Adam, then. How well communicated has there? Because I got a feeling from the objectors that they were not even aware of the temporary location that you've identified, or if we were mindful to grant this application, or current container holders to relocate to a temporary spot. I think they seem to. I got the impression, I could be wrong, that hadn't been discussed. So, was that something that has been well communicated to the objectors, to the container owners? And also, my second question, in terms of the rates, how have you arrived at your anticipated rates of future costings? What's that based on? And can you give us an indication of what the ground fees are at the moment, ground rates which the container holders pay at the moment? So essentially 2 questions here. The fees, current fees, anticipated fees, and how that's been calculated going forward, and just sort of communication around the work that's been done on the relocation business strategy thus.
In December 24, we invited all business owners to meet a project team. Our engagement on that was mixed from those from the businesses. Those that did attend, we spoke about their future needs of the business units that they potentially may take up. We also talked about the relocation strategy, which would be temporary buildings around the site. I hand over to you about relocation.
Well, I think all we've done as designers is to identify an area adjacent to the site with sort of the temporary. Yes, exactly. So we don't have all, until such time that there's a kind of schedule of who is staying, how much they require, and what Phil already has in the boatyard. It's very difficult to start to. I mean, let's say you do a diagram, it would be quite misleading. So I think what we've done is say that so the area of the boatyard that is shown in sort of grey blue, it has a kind of distinct shape, and that is the area of the yard that would be retained. The reason for that's where it's next to the crane, and that's where boatyard operations will happen, sort of essential repairs and so on, as I understand it. It's shaped the way that it is because the existing facilities block contains the current power supply to the crane. And so that is in the middle of the site and effectively divides the site, and that needs to stay until the new substation is in place. There's a very kind of careful choreography of events that needs to happen. On the area on the right has a lot of resurfacing happening. That's where the hard standing is insufficient for even the current boats, and that will be resurfaced and have new proper drainage and everything. Fortunately, the area that is in grey blue doesn't really have that problem. It has a slab that is functional and so can be used, and that is a really good thing about the site. So within that you can see that there will be a very constrained boatyard there, and the amount of space available for units is subject to something. It's sort of subject to review because we don't have a timeline until we have a decision. We don't know, and then we have to take stock and see what is going on the boatyard, what Phil has managed to do, changes, etc. Then to the left of that on the drawing is that area it's just between the boatyard and the actual lock. That is part of the public realm. And so we'd be looking, obviously you have to be careful what you put there and be precise. So that is an area where we can fit sort of, 20-foot containers in a sort of line. And we have done some layouts of that, but we haven't shared them because we feel that we want to look at it as a whole. So that is where things will go. And we've shown this kind of diagram, not exactly this one, but similar diagrams in terms of this is the area.
Thank you. And then sort of modelling on future rates compared to current. Yeah.
I'll pass over to you.
Thank you.
So perhaps I can sort of add some clarity. I mean, obviously, it's appreciated that no one likes their rate to go up, no matter what. It is also important to understand that the finished product of this application happens is different from the existing products, and so therefore the rental levels are going to be different accordingly, and also the rental level will be assessed by what the market will pay between the willing land tenants at any given time when that is there. So it's a discussion still to go on. However, there are three sort of divergent elements of rent. There'd be sort of the higher end of rent, sort of, which has been measured at £20 odd a square foot for the new workshop space in the building. There is then a sort of a £10 to £12.50 conversation about open workshops, and then actual land, where the existing containers would be sitting on, this sort of £5 a square foot. So there are different levels of rent within that. I think it's very important to delineate those different types of offering. I think secondly, what's really important is I know it's confusing because we're all Southwark, but the applicant and keeping elements of the sort of separate silos. The affordable workspace policy as is, and I'm not going to quote planning because I'll get it wrong, is 10% of the space for 30 years at a 20% discount from market levels. At the moment, the applicant is saying it's going to be 80% of the site for 30 years at 30% discount. So that's significantly higher than they need to be if they were trying to extract massive commercial value out of it. Obviously, as an organisation, we have to ensure that we're getting best consideration. We need to be able to fund the project and do that. But it's also recognising that balance of getting that right. And I think hopefully that helps clarify a little bit of sort of the rabbit holes we could all go down on rents and levels and different things.
Righto. And the starting rates, putting aside the discounted proposals, are comparable to what other sort of traders would pay at other marine sites?
So we had some advice from a firm of chartered surveyors that have specialist knowledge, especially the PLA, do a lot of work with the PLA on the Thames, up and down the Thames and other areas, looking at comparable industrial, quasi-industrial units in this area and vicinity and adjacent boroughs, but also looking at also the impact on marine businesses as well. So it's based on evidential figures rather than plucking something out of the sky just to sort of say we think that's right. So there's empirical evidence behind the decision, the process, if that makes sense.
Sorry, Michael. Yes, go ahead.
Well, just very quickly to say that policy P31 is at paragraph 58 of the policy report. Exactly what the policy says. I know Mark tried to quote it, but the actual wording is at paragraph 58, and it's 10% of the employment floor space on site at discount market rents for 30 years. Discount market rents is defined in the policy as rents that's less than market rent.
Right, sorry, sir. We've got our legal officer. Councillor Emmanuel, followed by Councillor Hood, and then thank you. And Councillor Emmanuel.
I've got 3 questions actually. Did you consider getting the people who are not staying, the businesses who are not staying, did you consider relocating them permanently so that they do not feel that they've been kicked out? And after the temporary move from them, or you tell them there's a site that they can stay there, that means that they've got no place to go back to. They're not going back to the scheme. So obviously it would have made more sense to have got them where they wanted to go and then afterwards utilize the scheme for those that are remaining. And the garden, since you're relocating, did you consult with the residents and the traders and what type of garden they wanted and how they wanted it done?
Currently, we don't know from the existing businesses who wish to stay or if any of them wish to leave. We hope that they all wish to remain. Any of those which do consider moving on, of course, we will work with them to help them move on as soon as they are ready. If they're not ready to move on for the time we need to potentially clear the art, We will look to move them into temporary accommodation with those which are staying. At the moment, we are working on that everybody will move to temporary accommodation, subject to approval, as it is not clear on those that are wishing to leave. It would be easier for us to just accommodate those which are staying for the long term and those which are going to move into the units when they are completed, because if there are some which are leaving, there will be less businesses to relocate temporary, which will take pressure off the areas which we still have in use whilst the first part of the works are carried out. But this time we're assuming that everybody will stay until we're told otherwise. With regard to the garden area, we had some planning pre-app advice and around what the garden area should resemble. We have shared during consultation that the area of garden that will be available, which is in the top right-hand corner on the diagram.
If I could maybe speak a little bit to what the scheme that we have designed does do, also is obviously the open space and community garden is a social space. I think that's a very important thing. And then, which is at the moment sort of ancillary and incidental to a primary function of the site, which is to use the facilities block. The new design changes the focus of this from within the yard. And in terms of planting, we have the area that is possible to plant in is not going to be part of the yard, the working yard, either the workshop yard or the boat yard, but that will be an area where the cafes, which will have soft planting. And as I said before, it's something we look forward to developing. There's certainly opportunity to develop that scheme in, working with the site owners and operators and users to accommodate planting and gardening. So there's soft landscaping that it's not designed in detail as part of this application. We were expecting it to be conditioned. So as for the social function, there's also a very important social function of meeting and greeting and talking in any space, anywhere. The new workshops are designed around this space as it's sort of like a muse, I suppose, that you have businesses that open onto a space on two levels, and there's a kind of walkway around that with views down, and the walkway is very wide. It's nearly 3 meters wide to accommodate transport and so on, but that also makes it a very generous space for talking. So whilst it's unlikely with the new world of health and safety and fire regulations that we find ourselves in, it's unlikely that you can leave any planting in that space or anything else, but you can certainly meet and have social interactions. And also in the new event space with the terrace upstairs, that it can also be developed as a flexible management plan and user plan for use by both residents, businesses, and external users. That's the sort of vision. As a design team, there's a lot of moving parts that haven't been defined. And so to address that as a design, we've tried to come up with something that is quite flexible, both during the design stage, as it progresses, and after it's completed in terms of how it's used, trying to think of the different scenarios. So that's what I would say as a sort of expansion. It's not just garden, but maybe social opportunities for social cohesion.
I suppose to summarise in key, which probably would be an advancement on sort of the current use of this, for want of a better word, amenity space, that it would actually become more inclusive to invite visiting members of the public who potentially would use the cafes. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas you don't at the moment get the sense of the current space that's been identified as this sort of community space. It feels very much like, totally agree, it's in the wrong location anyway. But it's more for the current residents on that site rather than an inviting space for any. Is that your vision? Anticipate going forward.
I mean, there's a balance here between design and operation. You know, clearly there's a boatyard in operation and a working yard, and I can't speak to how that will work as a designer.
No.
You know,
But
so
you're suggesting that this cafe space
yes,
would be a potential sort of outdoor amenities.
yes, there's soft planting there, and there's an outdoor seating area which is sort of covered by the terrace above it, so it's sheltered in case of inclement weather. And there's borders to that, and there's soft planting to go in that hasn't yet been scheduled out for design. And so that could include a planting area if that's a direction that it goes.
Thank you. Councillor Hood, followed by Councillor. Yeah, you got a supplemental?
Yeah, this is more like a landscaping. It's not a place where you can go and grow carrots, is it? If you're putting it in front of somebody's cafe and then you use it as a social area, it is not a gardening space for everybody. You've changed the whole garden concept.
The current garden is not used for growing carrots or any vegetables. It has a few plants in it. And a lot of it is overgrown.
Yes, I just wanted to add a comment following Councillor Livingston's intervention. I am growing concerns about how this application feels somewhat incomplete, and there are lots of open concerns around the business relocation strategy, and as well as that, the affordable workplace strategy. Friends. I just wanted to add some specificity to a condition I'd like to throw in that requires the applicant to redo those two documents to committee. Those to be.
So we can.
Yeah. I wanted to add in that second document though, the affordable workplace strategy. I do have some questions for legal on that, but I'm happy to save until later.
Well, just very quickly, it would probably be more for the debate, but if the committee were minded to go down that route, that the way it would work essentially it would be a resolution to grant, subject to the conditions, the completion of Section 106 agreement, and one or both of those documents coming back to planning subcommittee for approval. So essentially the resolution to grant would be subject to that being approved by the committee. So if you felt that was necessary, that is something that would.
You've headed off my question.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to ask about the move from this sort of predominantly ownership model now to the rental model that is proposed. Does the council take the view that it is wrong in principle or for any particular reason to have a status quo where the nature of this area is that most businesses own their
The council, as the landowner and landlord, needs to ensure that the governance of the site is protects the council's position. Currently, the containers, we have no control over them as what goes on in them or how they're modified in any way. The proposed new buildings will have a lease which clearly dictates what is acceptable and what is not acceptable of the tenant. In those buildings, there is precautions for fire alarms and other and electrical installations in them which are compliant. Recently, we had did a number of visits to containers, which we tried to organise with our health and safety manager. We are very thankful to those container owners which complied and invited us in to meet them. There are many that didn't and still remain to engage with the health and safety team as to what they store and how their containers are maintained inside.
Thanks. So from your answer, it sounds like part of the intention of the scheme is for the council to more directly control the area. Is that fair to say, that the council wishes to take more direct control over these businesses in this area in general, rather than giving freedom to the business owners who, you know, as you've characterised it, the council is not able to have oversight of at the moment?
I think the marina management who are part of the council need to be clear in their responsibilities for operating the site, and therefore the marina management team need to have better control on the activities that go on within the boatyard.
Yeah. So is there any? Would you say that is a kind of core to this project? What I'm sort of driving at is I want to understand what the vision is for the future, because I think that there is an issue between a proposal which will drastically and in some ways fundamentally change the nature of the area, and the kind of conditions that we've been discussing this evening, which seek to lessen the impact on the people who are currently there. So a proposal where the kind of at the core of it is something which changes the area quite fundamentally. It is then a lot for that to overcome for a business relocation strategy or an affordable workplace strategy to address that. I think it's probably fair to say that, commercially speaking, any business would struggle with a 2 to 3-fold increase in their costs, or perhaps up to 4, or whatever it is. So I just want to understand what the intention is, because I think the way that you kind of characterize it in your opening statement, you sort of spoke of it as investment in the existing area. But it sort of strikes me that from the discussion we've had, it sounds a little more as though the area itself is changing substantially in order to address things that the council sees as being problematic. So that is what I'm kind of driving at. I mean, the other aspect to this that I would be good to get your view on and to understand more is the commercial aspect. You know, because the current ownership model does not allow the council to extract, you know, sweat assets, or whatever the phrase is, as much as it would with a rental model. So it would be good to understand if that is part of what the intention of this scheme is and what the vision for the scheme is.
If I could just jump in for a couple of little points on that. Not talking about what the applicant's business model is, because that's for them to talk about. I think it's incredibly important that the council look at the compliance of all its land and buildings that it owns, whether it's a freeholder, leaseholder, and has tenants in, whatever the tenure is. Building regulations have changed, they're dramatically changing, they're very dynamic, and being delicate. Some of our tenants aren't necessarily sophisticated enough to understand all those changes and deal with those things. And ultimately, sorry, I didn't mean it in a rude way, no, because those laws change, and if something goes wrong, the council as the freeholder will potentially be liable. So we need to ensure that our buildings are all appropriate, safe, compliant for everybody, and that's it's really complex, and it's very complex, and it changes all the time. So it's really important that we can have a degree of control over things, which a lease allows us to do. Now, and it's not saying that anyone's doing anything willful or wrong or unwillingly doing something, but it is very important that we have that ability so that we're all safe.
No, although I suppose you're welcome to respond. It's more to the master of the applicant. how would you characterise your relationship with the business community in general over the course of this process, and I suppose generally?
I've been in post just coming up to 3 years. It has been quite tricky at points along the way. I inherited a number of issues when I arrived. We've tried quite hard to carry birth holders with us along the way. There are other items which are also challenging for us other than the boatyard, which we are also working to try and carry birth holders with us. Ultimately, as a council, we have responsibility for the marina that we operate and for our residents on there. And we take that seriously. And therefore, some of the decisions are unpopular. But I'd rather be unpopular for a decision I made that ensured that people were safe than not take a decision.
Just wanted to, so one of the things that we heard earlier from the objectives is that at some point in this process, there was a commitment to a co-design process for this. Is that the case?
There was a commitment with the Regen team when they were looking at a mixed development of housing or co-design. For this project was then handed on to the Arts project team. We have continued to try and engage with the birth holders and business tenants, but on that part, it was only stakeholder engagement through design.
Okie dokie. Are there any further applicants? Can I just ask you, sir, a little bit about storage facilities? I know there was concern raised by the objectors around that, and in the report it states that the status quo will be retained in terms of current birth holders. And is this storage facilities for birth holders or storage facilities for sea container holders that they were referring to? And if so, what is the current capacity? How many storage facilities are on site at the moment?
We currently have no large containers which are used solely for storage. Containers which are there now have businesses in. We have 24 multi-store containers, which are a 40-foot container split up into, I guess you could explain them as like eight sheds. The new scheme allows for those to remain on site, and they will remain on site during the temporary relocation as well. And those are let to individual birth holders for additional storage.
Righto. And are they fully occupied at the moment? Are they fully used at the moment?
Currently, I have 3 which aren't occupied.
So, okay. So their concerns would be alleviated by the retention of those storage units.
There's 24 units available in total. There are 200 boats within the marina. So we would not have the ability to offer storage to every boat, only 20 maximum capacity.
That's the maximum. So we need to make sure that that remains maximum. All righty. Okay. If there are no further questions, I thank you, officers, applicants. Are there any supporters in the audience that would like to speak on this particular application? No? Your supporter, if you'd like to come forward, sir. Oh, right, you'd just like to, right, righto, okay, noted. I thank you. Ward councillors that would like to speak on this application, if you'd like to come forward and introduce yourselves, please. And then you'll have 3 minutes to speak and you'll get a 30-second warning.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nick Johnson, Surrey Docks Ward.
Councillor Jane Salmon, Surrey Docks Ward.
When you're ready, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. If we run out of time, please ask questions. As you can see from the photographs up there, the boatyard could do with a bit of a spruce up, and I don't think anyone would deny that. But I'd like to present two potential futures, dependent on how this application goes. Let's say the application goes through exactly as is. 5 years' time, the boatyard will look magnificent. It will gleam. It will be commercially significantly more profitable for the council. One of the reasons for that is because the majority of the smaller businesses will have had to leave. I think the debate has been mentioned today about the affordability for any commercial enterprise of having its rents hiked 2 to 3 times, if not more than that. There are some businesses for whom that is probably possible. Any of you who've seen the Thames Ribs boats going up and down the Thames, the ones with people screaming in them as James Bond plays as they go by, they're based in the boatyard. They might be one of the businesses which could afford a significant rent hike, and in fact, maybe a business which would welcome having extra space. But it's a rather more complicated picture of businesses in the boatyard. As you've heard, some of those businesses are quite small. Not all of them are directly related to marine activities, although there are businesses which, for instance, make sails. I haven't seen the books, but I'm fairly confident that being a sailmaker is not as profitable as running the Thames Ribs. So if I was to take a guess as to what type of business would be forced out, it's probably going to be a small business, a micro business, such as that. I think that it's important to understand the nature of the boatyard. It's not just a boatyard. It's not just a commercial enterprise that the council coincidentally owns. It is I've never seen anything like it. It's a unique combination of a place that people live and a place that people work. Many of the people who do one also do the other. They live there, they work there, they can literally walk to work. It is a community where people seem to stick around. Thank you. They seem to stick around, in some cases, 20 years. They help each other out. So even if you are, as you've heard, a business which doesn't have a direct connection to the boatyard, in a sense it does, because actually they all help each other. They all work together. And if all those small businesses are ripped out and replaced with large businesses, it'll be the Starbucksization of high streets. It'll look glossy. It'll look great. But the community will not be there anymore.
Okay, that's your 3 minutes. Councillor
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'd like to invite you if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Well, that's very kind of you, Councillor Hood. There is a little bit more. These kind of debates happen every time that there is a planning committee meeting, of course. Generally in these cases, one of the big questions is, would the applicant be willing to flex on this, be more generous on that? This is unusual. We are the applicant. And in that sense, I think the council should hold ourselves to the highest of standards. If we're going to approve an application, it should be the gold standard of applications and not one which has a series of compromises in it. To that end, we know it's a very welcome investment. There has, as you've seen, been extensive interactions and discussions between the community and officers. I think that what is slightly getting lost in this is that it needs to be seen as a community which the council has an element of a duty of care for. It's not quite the same duty of care that you would have if this was a council estate and we were saying, we're going to renovate your estate, you're going to have to leave your flat. That is effectively what happens. If you're told you're going to have to get out, We're going to work on, for instance, you're going to work on your boat, and you can't stay in the boat any longer for health and safety reasons, which is understandable. If you were told you have to get out of your council house because we're going to remove asbestos from the ceiling, but by the way, we're not going to help you with any kind of relocation, just get out and come back, it wouldn't work. The residents and the businesses in the dock are incredibly keen to co-create a vision. They want to work with the council. They're not an obstructive group of people who say, I don't want any development, I want things to stay as they are. They want things to change. They would welcome money. If nothing else, they'd welcome a regular electricity supply, which I think the new substation will help with. So some suggestions which you may wish to consider. We need to keep the new yard, the new vision for that yard, affordable. An ideal scenario will be making future rent increases capped to inflation level, which as a council we can choose to do. We are the applicant. We don't have to worry about the affordability of this. We can take a view if we wish to do that. If that is not possible, something more generous than what the current state of quo is. Because what will happen is some businesses will leave immediately, some will hang on for 2 to 3 years, and in 5 years' time, half of the businesses, I'm going to take a shot. It's not 99%, it's probably about half of them will have gone. They will have been replaced by commercially more viable businesses, but we will have killed the community in that process, and it won't come back. This is the only council-run boatyard that I'm aware of on the Thames. So yes, we can benchmark it against some cat and stock, but that's run by a Texan hedge fund. They have different objectives. Couple of specific additional requests, which one of them has been touched on, one of them hasn't really, but there is a desire contingent upon this planning application to co-create a community workshop with a space created in the new vision. That's not been possible to talk about yet because the plan needs to be agreed first, were it to be approved. And I think that's something that residents would love to do on a peppercorn rent. If people need to get off boats for safety reasons when they're being redeveloped, can we look at some form of way of supporting them? Where are they going to live? These are not necessarily wealthy people. Can we look at making the rents affordable so that those small businesses, the sailmaker, the creative business, can stick around as well as the Thames Ribs? And finally, on storage units. There are two elements to storage units. There's storage units for the businesses, but there's also storage units for people, the residents who actually live on the boats. A lot of those boats are tiny. Currently, they've put all of their loose bits and pieces on the pontoons, which is a health and safety hazard. They have to be cleared out. The current proposal is scoop all of that up, put it in a container. I understand down by the leisure centre, which is about a 15-minute walk for many people away from the boats. And part of the reason is it's a tight boatyard. There isn't much space for all of the stuff that people have. People have bags of coal because that's how they heat their boats. They have whatever bits and pieces you gather in your life and you don't have space for it. People would put it in their garden shed. You can't if you have a boat. A proposal on that would be, yes, with open arms, take a container down by the leisure centre. There is space for that as an area where they can store things which they don't use very often, but have some kind of Amazon-style lockbox at the end of each jetty where the things that people do use every time, particularly heating fuel, is stored. Because I guarantee if that isn't the case, there will be non-compliance. Officers will endlessly be chasing people up because people will go, it's February, it's 10 o'clock at night, I've run out of fuel. I'm not going to walk 15 minutes down the jetty to try and unlock the container, try and find my bag of fuel. There needs to be a better way of doing that. So apologies, that's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes, a lot of specific requests. I think there's a really exciting vision here. If it goes through as is, it will kill the boatyard. If it goes through with a number of key specific changes, it could be brilliant and the community could come with it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hood?
Thank you, Chair. What a follow-up question on that. So this application, it's fair to say, has some issues. And from what we've heard tonight, the relationship between the applicant and the business in the boatyard is, let's say, challenging at times. One of the options that we have been considering as a committee is to require the applicant to return with the two strategy documents we mentioned earlier, which perhaps may require re-consultation and re-engagement with Boatyard. I guess, do you think that is a workable mechanism by which we can resolve some of the challenges we have here, perhaps including some of the other conditions mentioned? I guess what I'm trying to ask is what I usually ask councillors who are on that side of the table is what you want us to do in this situation. How do you want us to vote on this application?
I will speak for myself, and Jen, of course, you will speak for yourself. I think there's a difference between consultation and co-creation, and there is a danger often that consultation can be. We showed you our plans, you've expressed dissent, and we've done the plans anyway. So yes, it would be welcome for it to come back to committee. I think it will be helpful for this committee to think carefully about what are the things that, if this were to go ahead, we definitely want to happen, i.e. condition them, rather than simply loop it back for a consultation, because the potential is we'll be sitting here in however many weeks' time, and residents will still be saying this doesn't work for us. There are a few things which I think are potentially easy wins, which could get this over the line, and get a community which really wants to work with the council and co-create something on the same page.
I agree. That's my contribution.
Any further questions? Councillor Livingston, Councillor.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask any questions, but given what you've just said, Nick, I'm going to try and pin you down a little bit more. So you were saying, so you heard, there's been some discussion here about whether we ask elements of Section 106, so in particular the affordable workplace strategy and business relocation strategy, to come back to committee. For you, what would be the asks in both of those documents that you would like to see to get us to a place where you think that it could be agreed? Bearing in mind that I'm assuming that you have a long list, some of which may be possible and some of which may not, but just to understand what that list looks like.
Thank you, Richard.
Can I just add additionally the caveat, bearing in mind that going forward, and notwithstanding that this is the site has to remain viable going forward. Going forward, that we do have a duty of care to, or the planning authority, to adhere to health and safety matters. Going forward, that I think part of this proposal and part of this process is to declutter the site, and going back to my previous point of health and safety, irrespective of whether a storage facility is 10-15 minutes away and not on site, giving all of those elements, right? So if you've got a long list of longer than my arm, to bear that in mind, because we do need to bear in mind the fact that we do need to adhere to those policies. Okay.
Just a point just on one of the queries raised was regarding the storage boxes at the end of the pontoons, which are currently used for coal and kind of other pieces of equipment that the residential berth holders have. The red line for this application site extends around the boatyard. The proposal does not, and the planning application description of development doesn't propose any changes to the current pontoon storage arrangements. We don't have any details of that. So I just want to reiterate, in terms of, we are looking at the storage facilities within the boatyard. That's a separate agreement between the residential berth holders and the harbour master for the pontoons.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I don't think after Lacanol and Grenfell any councillor is going to disregard health and safety. The potential of allowing something through because it makes it easy, and then people dying. No one's going to do that. So I don't think there is a debate that the yard see. There needs to be some greater regularity put into that. And I don't think that if this committee were to ignore that it will get through any kind of appeals process. It will be rejected. But I do think there are ways in which the current proposal could be improved. So as you say, the storage on the pontoons is, I guess, like a lot of planning applications, it is a separate but related issue.
Sorry, Nick, can I just ask you to be slightly more specific? So I'm talking specifically about the affordable workplace strategy and about the business relocation strategy.
Specifically on that, I think the ask is to look at how it can be made, the rents can be made more affordable for those smaller businesses. There are some businesses which will be able to afford doubling or tripling the rent and may welcome if as part of that they get to double their workspace. There are a lot of businesses, a chunk of them will go in the first year or immediately. A chunk of them will hang on because where else are they going to go? The thing about this being a council-run boatyard is it is slightly more generous than some of the other alternatives, slightly, but they will eventually be pushed out. And I think that the most important thing in this application is that in improving the boatyard, the sense of community is retained. And the best way to do that is to ensure there is a diverse range of businesses. Some of them will be micro businesses, 1, 2 people organizations who are never going to afford doubling or tripling rent. I mean, you can give them 3 years, 5 years, 10 years before that happens. The answer will still be the same. I can't afford that.
It is a sliding scale, though. We've given a number of rates dependent on what the potential trader would like. There's the high end. There's sort of just to remind people, it wasn't a sort of a flat rate. It's dependent on square meterage, size, facilities offered within those.
Perhaps there would be an additional possible rate offered to smaller businesses which have a turnover of a level or a level of profitability below a certain cutoff point, which when you look at it, you think those are the ones that will probably leave. And if the question is, we don't want them to leave because actually that's going to kill the whole community that is there and it will become a series of large, highly profitable businesses, then a specific measure aimed at that group of businesses could, I think, make all the difference in retaining that sense of community.
Notwithstanding that there would need to be a range. Understand. Okay, thank you. Anything before your, Sam, go ahead.
Thanks. If we're talking about potential conditions that you might like to see, I wanted to go back to the question about the ban on sleeping in berths and the potential for that to cause homelessness. Is that something where you believe the committee should apply, as was suggested, a condition relating to that?
I think that would be sensible. From a health and safety perspective, there are good reasons why the council may not wish to wear the risk of people sleeping in their boats. It's late at night, they have a drink, they slip, they fall down. Who knows what may happen? But just acknowledging the reality that this is someone's home, and if they have to get out of their home, some form of support to make it possible for them to do that, I think, would be very helpful.
Yes, I was just going. I was going to actually just say. I mean, you used the analogy of if it was a council tenant, we do have a duty of care to relocate if that, and we do that routinely. So maybe that is something that could be considered. But I think, Michael, but we do need to adhere to health and safety. It would be.
Well, just on whether that condition would meet the legal tests of whether it's relevant to planning and relevant to the development to be permitted, I don't think it would, in the sense of it's something that's already happened. It's an agreement between the berth holders and the berth association. It's not directly related to this application or the development. So I think that would be, notwithstanding whether there would be health and safety issues associated with it. I think that would be difficult.
And just another point, what's slightly different in terms of it being a property which obviously the council own and lease. These are privately owned boats as well. So this isn't something where it's a leaseholder where we have a duty to obviously rehome or provide alternative accommodation. I think I also just wanted to raise perhaps and invite the harbour master just to respond on that point, because there's a useful photo that's been provided on this particular slide about how boats are actually stored when the works are being carried out. And I think actually the information that the harbour master has about how that arrangement is quite useful, just to, in terms of the background of why this isn't something to proceed with moving forward. So Phil, did you just want to maybe mention about that bottom right hand photo?
Okay, so the boat in the bottom right hand corner is approximately 9.5 meters long. It is supported in the boatyard in a yacht cradle, so that the boat is normally supported like, if it's a yacht, it's normally supported like this. If it is a boat like a motorboat, it would be supported on stands. Generally, the boats are similar height. You can actually see the boat behind is a similar height off the ground as well. From the top of the guardrails down to the ground is about 3.5 meters. The person that was on this boat is one incident where the person climbed off of the boat, and as he climbed off the boat onto the ladder, he fell onto the ground. Thankfully, he only broke a leg. We don't really want anybody to break a leg, but he broke a leg. The good news is it could have. Good news is it wasn't worse. There are incidents of people falling off boats at that height. If they land on their head, they don't survive. We had a second incident where somebody fell off the boat at a similar height and broke their pelvis. In October 23, we had a small fire in a container, electrical fire. Luckily, the container actually, the fire remained in the container. It didn't spread. If it had spread, the chances are the next container, the next shed, the next boat could potentially have caught fire. If we have people sleeping in boats overnight, they are not aware of what is going on around them. So potentially, we could have somebody that is asleep that's caught in a fire. It hasn't happened. Over the last year, we've had a fire warden on site. Originally, we had them in there for 24 hours, day and night. More recently, we now have them there from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. After 7 at night, the boatyard is shut and there should be nobody in there. That is how we are maintaining a watch on the risk of what goes on in the boatyard. That is the reason why we have stopped people sleeping on boats. It's not to make them homeless.
Thank you, that's clear. Nick?
Thank you. Just very briefly, Phil, of course, is right. There is a danger. And I don't think this committee is ever going to approve that people should sleep on boats while they're being repaired, much though I understand residents would like that. I think the question is there anything that the council can do to help offset the impact on those individuals? As Michael said, there isn't much legally that can be done on this, and if this is Berkeley Homes would say, doing it, but it's not Berkeley Homes, it's us. We can decide to if we wish to, as a council.
But the relevant legal tests for conditions still need to be proposed. Whether the committee could, for example, decide to write something, say something to the separate part of the council that is responsible for owning the marina or boatyard, that's something that could be considered, but it's just whether this is the correct decision in which to try and address that issue.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Chair. On the materiality of this, it sounded like there was the objectors wanted. I do want to hear their perspective.
Chair, I'm a little concerned we're spending a lot of time on something here that we've been advised by officers isn't actually material to the application. So I'd like to speak against that proposal.
Understanding what's inside these containers, that some of the owners refused entry when there was a health and safety inspection. So that is a concern where we're trying to sort of work, the harbour master is trying to sort of work collaboratively with the residents. One final point.
I think it speaks to the nature of the relationship between residents and officers at the moment. It's become fractious and there is a low level of trust, perhaps on both sides. I hope there are ways in which, perhaps with the actions of this committee, that trust can be restored. So it feels like this is something which is not being done to them, but it's co-created with them.
Thank you very much. And there's no further.
I have a question for our legal officer. The conditions that we are speaking about and may be minded to impose on the business relocation strategy and the affordable workplace strategy, if we were to apply a condition that required those documents to be totally redone and represented to the committee, does that carry an obligation for the applicant to undertake consultation again as part of the process? I kind of want to go back to what we had many hours ago from Jed of the Law Centre about an obligation to meaningful consultation with active stakeholders. I think it's my objective.
Yeah. So if the committee were interested in going down that route, it wouldn't be a condition as such because you wouldn't be granting permission now. It would be the resolution, would be a resolution to grant, subject to the conditions in the report, the completion of a Section 106 agreement, and the approval of the business relocation strategy and affordable workspace strategy at planning subcommittee following consultation with affected businesses would be the resolution.
Okay.
So it would be the permission would not be granted or issued until that approval at planning subcommittee, and the resolution could specify that it would have to be following consultation with affected businesses.
And one final question: if we granted permission subject to those conditions, does that limit any other changes the applicant may wish to take? If there was, let's say, a change to the design that emerged as a result of that, the applicant would not do that because we've already granted permission to a design in its current form.
The short answer, I think it would, yeah, I think it would, it's a little difficult to answer the hypothetical. It would depend how big the change was. There's case law essentially which says that once there's been a resolution to grant, if a new material consideration arises between that and the resolution to issue the permission, then it has to go back to committee. So if new issues come up, I would say it's probably not a hard and fast yes or no. I'd expect that, you know, if the applicant following consultation thought, well, actually we've looked at it again and we want to do something differently, then there there'd be nothing stopping them doing that, and then potentially it might have to be consulted on again, depending on the extent of the change. I think the key would be that the resolution would specify that they wouldn't have to do that. The further consultation would be on those documents. If they wanted to make other changes, then it's their application and they can make changes.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, that really does help. Councillor Dalton.
Yeah, just on the point around if we do insert something saying they have to vote on, we go any further with the wording than just saying consultation, or can we actually specify more detail based on the points that have been made on the difference between some levels of consultation and sort of co-design, or would it need to be something that we evaluate at the next? We could look to new strategies and actually look at make a judgment on the level of consultation at that point.
I think it would be more the second, in the sense of the applicant makes proposals and supports them with evidence and documents, and people have the chance to say what they think about those. That's the way this works, basically. And of course, consultation implies that a proper consultation is one where you're interested, you haven't made your mind up, you're interested in hearing what people have to say, and you are open to changing your proposals if you think that people have made good points. So the committee at that later stage would be able to decide whether, this has been a fair and proper consultation, whether they listened to residents, whether residents have made good points, or whether they just gone into it thinking, no, this is what we want to do and we're going to close our minds. But I think at this stage, trying to specify with any more certainty exactly what has to be done in terms of process, procedure, is difficult.
Richard, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a slight development on that point. So I understand your point about process. Clearly, if we're asking for documents to come back, and in both cases of the two documents, I think there have been some views expressed that there are some deficiencies at the moment. Is it helpful for us to say what we think some of those are to give a steer to the applicant?
I don't think there's a reason why not. No.
Do you have?
Other members committee may disagree. I think for me, so I think Michael's wording in terms of resolution, I'd like to put in terms of how we go forward in terms of the business relocation strategy and the affordable workplace strategy, I think was helpful, and I'd certainly supportive of an application on those grounds. I think for me, the key things that are outstanding are that point that Nick raised about the sort of ecosystem and affordability for micro businesses, whether that could be explored further in terms of the affordable workplace strategy, and perhaps also the phasing of those steps, because 3 years done, which might be viable. So I think those things need to be looked at. And in terms of business relocation strategy, it's that concern about what other support might be available for those businesses that could remain tight, because just paying for the co-tailor doesn't seem sufficient. So I think those would be the points.
Yes, I know we're going on about this. I guess I want to explain a bit my thinking with this and how we position. I think the reason for or the motivation behind wanting to bring those documents back to this committee is to address the uncertainties and some of the challenges that have arisen as part of this committee, and a definite feeling that the consultation with stakeholders of the boatyard is not adequate, and there are challenges in. I think the motivation for wanting to bring that back in the committee is to signal to the applicant that wants to invest in this. However, there is something wrong in this relationship here that we have to address. So there is hold back until those two documents. That those two documents, yes, it's that's then up to the applicant how they proceed with those. They could do the same thing again. And but the spirit of, I guess, what I'm asking is they go back and reconsult with this group and repair that relationship, because that's not working here. But I understand that's not necessarily we can put in, right?
The sentiment.
I wanted to explain my sentiment.
No, appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think just a point to raise, and I think this was acknowledged by officers, hence why we recommended that we got an updated document anyway, is that there were some points which needed to be further explored once all existing businesses had declared the interest as to staying or going. The policy P33, which is business relocation in the sub plan, it does have quite a detailed list of points which need to be addressed, which I think is a useful guide of what we would be expecting to have received anyway, prior to commencement of any development on the site. So that's something that we can work with the applicant on and use as a structure to.
I think just a general point coming back, before we heard from applicant and objectors tonight, I was, in a general sense, unhappy with the amounts of delegation. Permission is granted subject to the extraction rate. I think that was too undefined for us to.
Understood. I just wanted to provide some reassurance that the policy in the Southwark Plan provides a very useful structure and guidance to allow that further information to be presented to committee.
Really, I think just very, I mean, all of you will have an opportunity to refer to that, but where existing smaller independent businesses maybe displaced by development, relocation strategy could be created existing amount of non-residential floor space supplied by use class, including vacant units and yardless, should include any floors listed demolished, schedule of existing businesses operating on the site, including businesses. So it's very detailed, where existing businesses accommodated a new development strategy should include specific business requirements, including such, yes.
So in the policy area.
Yeah. So you just for members to just get a sense of it, it's pretty detailed. So we, and that's P30,
the full
P33.
On page, paragraph 67 is a full copy of that policy. If you are just discussing that.
Who else? Kind of sort of.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, building on what Councillor had said, I think it's important to say that it's not just a sort of general sentiment that we are attempting to express in a legal way. I think that at least I'm satisfied, and perhaps others on the committee are as well, that the standard of consultation that is in the policy met by the business relocation strategy is not met by what was actually. So for us to put a condition on this now is a recognition of the fact that more work actually comes to meet the policy, let alone our views that we may hold separately about the nature of this relationship and what in practice we would like to see brought forward. I did want to I have a question though, something that you had mentioned, Zoe, about the need for the business relocation strategy to be finalised once it is known which businesses are relocating and which are not. Presumably, that will depend on how affordable the new workspace is. So I think that we need to build in enough time for there to be agreement on a revised affordable workspace for a proposal that is worked up in the spirit of collaboration and consultation, and I think with a desire which has been stated by the applicant for businesses to remain where they are, that should be at the core of the policy that comes forward. That work clearly has to be done first, and then the business relocation strategy finalised subsequently. So I think that is something that perhaps our conditions should recognise, because it doesn't really make sense to do it otherwise.
Is that something which we can stimulate? I mean, I just assumed that the two would happen simultaneously rather than one before one other.
I think obviously you've made
pick my counsel from.
Obviously you've vocalised your request in terms of the order of those pieces of work, and I think that's something which we can discuss with the applicant team in terms of the evolution of these two documents, and actually also for them to demonstrate then through the resubmission of those documents and the consultation, which will obviously you'll review the engagement that's been undertaken, that they undertake that piece of work and formalise that affordable work strategy, and then undertake some consultation, and then that obviously will inform the business relocation strategy as well. So I think it's useful for them to hear that as well in terms of how the committee envision those two documents to evolve over the next few weeks and months.
And we are talking about weeks rather than several months, just to bear that in mind. Everyone to. It's not about kicking this down into the long grass. Thank you. Any further comments? Dalton?
It may be on that point around homelessness and the letter that we sent from to other parts of the council that Michael mentioned. You know, I would recently support something like that if we can do it. But I don't know if that's actually formally goes on to the application, but just on that, it certainly, as Chair of Planning, there have been issues which we've decided aren't planning considerations, but we've thought important. So we've had some housing applications where we wanted to raise some issues about how those homes were allocated, for example, lettings or management, as we did with Stars House. We agreed that couldn't be part of how we determined the application, but I, as Chair, wrote to the relevant cabinet members to ask they look at that, and it could be it's obviously for the Chair to decide whether that's something that she'd want to do or not, but that is open to her to write to the relevant cabinet member to say, these issues came up in committee, you might want to consider these things.
Being minuted. Right, okay. Yep. Happy to do. Do come on. To previously.
So Parks and Leisure are the applicant team which are leading on this.
So would it be? Yeah, yes, it is. All right, are we? Yeah.
I agree that the strategy is rethought, because I get the sense that the ones that are not staying don't know what's going to happen. They're in a sense of loss. So therefore, we have to look into how things will go forward, rather than I have this bit, you have that bit, how the whole thing goes forward, consultation and dialogue.
Chair, the resolution be resolution to grant, subject to conditions and the completion of Section 106 agreement as set out in the report and the addendum report, with the following amendments: approval of a business relocation strategy and affordable workplace strategy at planning subcommittee following further consultation with affected businesses, considering the phasing of affordable rents, the position of smaller businesses, the support available for businesses not able or willing to remain on site, and the criteria in policy P33. And then finally, the chair also has the right to the relevant cabinet members for parks and leisure to ask them to consider the issue of providing additional support to residents whilst their boats are under repair.
Thank you. And can also add that 24, the storage facility, that will be the maximum. That's what.
Is that something, Michael, that we could look at an additional condition on that rather than it being a requirement to come back, that we could have a condition requiring that being the maximum storage facilities for compliance
So
condition?
this is in the addendum where Councillor Soanes is asking that the current storage that is on site be kept as the maximum that is allowed to be on site.
Happy, because that's what the Harvard said was the capacity. Are we happy to but I'm not speaking to you, sir. Thank you.
So
Right, Michael.
no, I'm looking for.
Right. Okay.
All right. So paragraph 13 of the addendum report relates to a concern by ward councillors about the loss of storage.
There isn't any loss. It will be retained. That's what I.
So what would
questioned
the?
about
So I
loss.
guess I don't.
So I asked him that what the capacity was at the moment. He says that is what will be retained.
So the condition is aimed to retain the existing
Yes, and not to
within the boatyard.
within the boatyard.
So is it so something that the applicant doesn't intend to do? They just want to condition them to not do something that they've expressed that they won't do.
No, not to add any.
Could I suggest that since the entire business relocation strategy is coming back to subcommittee anyway, that just it also consider the issue of on-site storage?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And so there's no decision on it. But
To be. So could you incorporate? Thank you.
so everything I just said,
Yeah.
the criteria
So
in
it's all
policy,
covered. Yeah.
the criteria in policy P33 and on-site storage, and then chair to write to the relevant.
Do I need to write that out? Or is that? Do I need to form that out?
I think if you just say that's the resolution, at a second.
Yes. Thank you. That is the resolution I'd like to propose. Do I have a second for Councillor Livingston? So, all those in favour?
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, officers. Thank you. Right. Right. Yeah. Shall I? Will you send that? I'll take a photo.
The 17th of June and the 1st of July. I'm sure that can work on those documents and bring them back.
Yeah. If they. No, I'll put it on. Yeah, my phone. Yeah. Then I know I won't lose it.